Hello everyone, and welcome to Retro Brick Reviews, where today I will be taking a look at all of the LEGO Star Wars sets to be released in the summer of 2020. And when I say summer, I mean on September 1st, because they have all been delayed for reasons that should be fairly obvious to all of us that have not been living under rocks recently. So, without any more further ado, let's begin by taking a look at what probably is in the top 3 for most controversial sets being released this season. And the fact that I have to make a top 3 list and that there are several sets that qualify is quite frightening. Anyway, set number 75280, the 501st Legion Clone Troopers, also known as that all-desired 501st Battle Pack. This set includes 4 minifigures, a pair of B-1 Battle Droids, and 285 pieces, and it will retail for about $30 in the United States. It comes with 2 quite nice builds, and starting with the first of them, we have a new design for a Clone Wars era Trt Walker. This is different from the design we've seen previously last year in the Clone Scout Walker, as well as in 2013, verbatim, in the 501st ATRT set. This is a new design that is a bit smaller, which is good. This is still about twice the size it would be in Universe, but I don't know. They sized it down a little bit, make it a bit closer to how it should be, and I get why it needs to be larger. Kids like their big walkers, and this is a cheaper alternative to, say, an ATST. So, all's good there, in my opinion. You have a good amount of stickers used, both for the front shield as well as on the sides of the legs. You have seating for 1 figure, clips at the back for accessories. Everything here seems to be pretty good, aside from the stud shooter used for the main turret barrel, which is not good looking at all, in my opinion. They should have had something there to represent the actual long gun barrel. Oh well. That's something that can be easily modified, but still, it would have been nice to have it actually included in the set. Our other build is a Bark Speeder, which is also something we've gotten a good amount of times before, but this is something we don't see as often. In fact, I don't think we've had a dedicated set based on one since 2014 with the Battle of Seleucami. And I think this build is quite nice as well. I do find it more interesting than the ATRT, but that's probably just because I already have 2 other ATRT walkers, and this will be my first Bark Speeder. But the design is very good based on its appearance in the Clone Wars TV series, which in itself is based on its appearance in Revenge of the Sith originally. You have a couple of stud shooters up at the front. You have a few more stickers, mainly on that fin at the back. You have a couple more clips for accessories. The figure can hold on to the handlebars. Yeah. Again, not much to say because it's a rather simple design of a rather simple craft in universe, but it just looks quite nice. It's accurate. Good stuff. Good to have. The set includes 4 troopers for the 501st Legion, and starting with the first 3 figures, we get a 501st Legion Jet Trooper, as well as 2 of the 3 501st Clone Troopers included. And I think all of these figures look really good. I do, of course, prefer the classic 501st designs that were in Revenge of the Sith, and that I personally am very nostalgic for from the Battlefront 2 game for the second PlayStation, also known as the PlayStation 2 if you're not going to say things weird and out of order like I just did. Anyway, they have good helmet prints all around. I like the blue printed in the cheeks on the Jet Trooper, but they did go with the gray cheeks on the standard troopers to give a more animated style, because if you can't tell, these troopers are using a new printing style to represent how they appeared in the 7th season of Star Wars The Clone Wars on Disney+. This is different from the previous Clone Wars style, and definitely is a lot closer to how they appeared in Revenge of the Sith, which, overall, I think this is a pretty good style to go with. It looks quite nice. The torsos are all good, although I wish that they'd all had blue arms rather than just the Jet Trooper, since white arms does make the standard figures look maybe a little plain. And the leg prints are good across the board, even though, much like the blue arms, but even more egregious, why do they have white hips? Star Wars, Clone Troopers, and Imperial Troopers have all had black hips ever since 1999 with the original Imperial Scout Troopers, and it's been pretty much universal ever since, so it is a bit strange, definitely, to go with white hips now for some reason. Oh well. It doesn't look bad, just a weird change-up to me. For our other figures, we get a third identical 501st Trooper, albeit with a cleverly designed blaster rifle featuring the Harry Potter candle element, as well as a pair of B-1 Battle Droids, which, while not exclusive or all that exciting, it has been a good few years since we've had a relatively inexpensive and massable way to get a large amount of B-1s, so this is actually not a bad inclusion at all, and it'll be nice to have a couple extra. So overall, this is a really good set. But of course, with this set, I think there is one thing that has to be brought up. Simply put, how it was achieved. Or how people think it was achieved. Basically, if you're not in the loop, back from late 2018 through until this set was revealed, there was a movement by a large portion of the Legostarwars community, led by YouTuber M&R Productions, to convince LEGO to produce a 501st Trooper Battle Pack. And when I say movement, I mean they just harassed LEGO on the internet, as people are prone to do. And of course, this is controversial because there are people who feel as though this is the most important thing ever, because they did it, they achieved it, the power of the people. There are people who think this was egregious because you shouldn't harass the poor LEGO social media guy. And then there are people who just don't care at all. But honestly, being completely honest, this set would have happened whether or not there was any movement at all. Do you really think that LEGO would have gone when Clone Wars Season 7 got released? Do you really think they wouldn't have done anything for the 501st Legion, seeing how prominently they featured in the Clone Wars series as a whole, but especially in that final season and those final few episodes? Also, do you really think that an overall small but vocal minority of fans on the internet are who LEGO makes sets for? The answer is no, they make them for the little kittens. The set's 7 and up, that's who this is for. So really, I think all this movement did was give LEGO the confidence to make this set a $30 product, rather than a cheap little $15 massable battle pack. So all the people who wanted this set to get 50 copies to have a huge army kind of played themselves there. But anyway, I could be completely wrong, but I'm probably not. Anyway, overall, this set is really nice. I'm glad to have it, and I'm excited to get my hands on it when it does release. Next up, we have another $30 set, that being set number 75281, Anakin's Jedi Interceptor, based on Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. It includes one minifigure, one astromech droid, and it'll include about 248 pieces. This is based on Anakin's yellow ETA 2 Interceptor from the Battle of Coruscant during Revenge of the Sith's opening. And this is a ship that we get relatively often in LEGO form. This yellow version has appeared twice before, in 2005 and 2014, but this ship in general has appeared in many different colors over the years, pretty commonly. However, it has still been a couple years since the last version, and this still looks really good. It is a nice update to have. You have good shaping with all the different wedge plates. You have a nice printed Republic insignia on the left wing, next to where R2 is positioned. Sideways, of course, because there's no real way to fit him in the correct way. You have the 2 large blaster barrels at the front. You have the 4 yellow winglets that can fold up if you want to land the craft. You have 2 nice printed pieces for the cockpit, which can fit 1 figure inside. And turning the model around to the back, you can get a better look at how that opens up to reveal a relatively comfortable seating area with a control panel. You have the Nexo-Knights shield pieces used with some Republic insignia stickers on them, which is probably the most obvious addition to this model from previous versions. The engines at the back are well done. You get a couple of spring-loaded shooters. Yeah, good stuff. Our 2 figures, from left to right, are R2-D2 and Anakin Skywalker. This R2 has been coming in sets since 2016 with the droid escape pod, but he still looks quite nice, and there isn't really a reason to update unless they decide to do something drastic, like give him a 3rd leg or redesign the body piece so his head can swivel a full 360 degrees without having to remove it to switch the positioning, but just as printing goes, this is as good as you're gonna get. Anakin is a little controversial as well, because his torso print has the scorch marks on it from the Battle of Mustafar, which we got previously as a set this year, which is where that print is reused from. Other than that, he's the Anakin figure from the Anakin's Jedi Starfighter set based on the first season of the Clone Wars TV show that we got a couple years back. That's fine. I think the likeness to Hayden Christensen is good enough, although I would have preferred a slightly more cocky smile. This one's a bit generic, but for Revenge of the Sith, you really want the "this is where the fun begins" kind of expression, you know? As for the torso, personally, if they were going to reuse the Anakin and Obi-Wan torsos from that set in sets this summer, they should have just, not printed burn marks. Because if they had not done that in the Battle of Mustafar and they just had normal torsos, I don't think anyone would have complained or even noticed. But now it's like, oh, that's a cool detail you have in this set. But now in this Starfighter and another set this summer, we have 2 really inaccurate minifigures, and it's unfortunate. And speaking of things that are unfortunate, this set's $30, and I don't see it. Now, personally, the last version was $25, and I think that $25 for this would be a good deal. I mean, you get 1 figure and a droid, both of whom are very important characters to the Star Wars saga. You have a pretty iconic ship, at least within the bounds of the prequel trilogy, and yeah. So, but $30, especially for something that at this point a lot of people already have some version of. I mean, if this is your first design of an Edit 2 Interceptor, then I can't really say anything against it. Like, it's an important ship to have. It's not that overpriced. I would go for it. But if you're someone like me who already has a version of this, it does feel a little pricey. And personally, aside from fixing Anakin's torso, I don't know, maybe they could have just thrown in like a buzz droid or 2, just something else to help set the scene a little more, increase play value and display value a little more, something like that. Just like a couple buzz droids, I feel could have elevated this to where I could have given it a pass at $30, but as is, this is a bit much. And I am honestly not sure whether or not I'll be picking it up when it releases, but it's still a nice set overall. Next up, we have set number 75283, another Clone Wars set, this being the Armored Assault Tank, the AAT. This set will include 2 minifigures, plus 2 battle droids, and it will retail for $40 and include 286 pieces. We'll talk about the price later. The build is, of course, the AAT itself, using its CIS color scheme seen in the Clone Wars animated series. And this looks pretty good in my opinion. This is a more downsized version compared to the original designs, similar to what we saw with the Trade Federation AAT in 2015. And personally, I like the downsizing. I know a lot of people don't like it because, oh, it's inaccurate, it's too small, but like, LEGO Star Wars sets, by and large, are so overly expensive and bloated that it's glad to see something where they're actually willing to downsize it, so I don't have to spend $80 on something that was in a television show for 30 seconds. I mean, it was in more than that. I'm exaggerating, because that comment was more about movie stuff, but whatever, you get my point. I like seeing things be smaller when it's possible to make them smaller, and cheaper when it's possible to make them cheaper. I don't like it when they make the X-Wing Starfighter a single-person craft a $90 set because they think they can get away with it. But this looks quite nice. The level of detail is good. You have a couple of spring shooters at the front. The turret at the top can swivel a full 360 degrees. Yeah. That turret, you can open up the top to stick a battle droid in there to shoot out, although I believe that if you want to have that folded up with the droid in there, you will have to scrunch the head down all the way. And the front can also open to reveal your pilot. That's nice, to have a little space to put the figure in there. Moving on to the figures, the set includes 4. From left to right, we have a pair of AAT pilot battle droids, Ahsoka Tano, and a 332nd Ahsoka Loyalist clone trooper. Those pilots are nothing new, but it is good to get them in an AAT, since previously they only, somewhat inaccurately, came in sets based on the Battle of Kashyyyk. I really like the head printing, which makes them the most difficult battle droids for LEGO to produce at the moment, so it's nice that they were able to include 2 of them in a set that, as Star Wars sets go, is relatively inexpensive. Ahsoka, I think the face print is as good as it's going to get without going with the standard minifigure eyes. Blue looks good enough, and I think they made it work. The torso print's great. The leg, the design on the legs is good, but the color is so bad. Why did they go with light gray? I think it's because of her, like, boots, but those are more of a dark bluish gray, or even a gunmetal. This is way too light, and it just looks terrible from the sides. Personally, I would have just forgone the boots. She's wearing, like, the black leggings underneath, so I would have just printed all this on black legs. That way the dark blue doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. And then her head tails are also an issue, because they are way too long. And the silver design is way too high up, and I know that it would have interfered with that silver design a little, but personally, if you couldn't make a new mold, in my opinion, they should have just used the original young Ahsoka head tails from the Clone Wars sets from, well, it started with the movie back in 2008. Because these pieces are way too long. Those ones are a little short, but they're much closer to how long Ahsoka's head tails should be. Because at this point, Ahsoka's like maybe 3 years older than she was in that figure, and she's still about 2 decades off from when we see her in the Rebels series. But yeah, even if they were going to use this piece, I think that silver element needed to be a lot farther down, and also a lot thicker, so it covered up more of her headpiece, so there isn't such a massive white space going on. Oh well, it's not terrible, just a little disappointing for for a character who is so iconic to so many people. Honestly, not to me as much as a lot of others, but still, a very important Star Wars character. Bit unfortunate to see her done kind of dirty, honestly, especially considering how few figures Ahsoka gets. Our last figure is a 332nd Trooper, which is just a 501st Trooper with an Ahsoka helmet. It's good. I like it. Please don't start an awful movement to get a battle pack made with these guys. Anyway, so, overall, this set is pretty good. Is it $40 good? Well, I mean, in terms of the price to part, it's pretty awful, since this set only has one more piece than the 501st set, which is $10 less. But number one, there's much worse price-to-part ratios in this wave, and number two, this set comes with a good amount of large pieces, such as the 2 large quarter circle pieces at the base, and actually that might be it, but okay, so, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if it doesn't use a lot of large pieces, overall, we have something that is quite large. It is a very beefy item in the Star Wars universe, and I feel as though for $30 this would be an absolute steal, so adding in the exclusive figures and everything that's here, $40 is pushing it a little. I think that $35 would have been a great price for everything we see here. For $40, I would have expected a new head-tail piece for Ahsoka to be really accurate to the series, but oh well. It's fine. I am most likely going to pick this up because the AAT has always been a craft that I have been relatively fond of since The Phantom Menace. I don't know why, I just think it looks cool. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about this set. Moving on to a set that I have very little at all to say about, we have set number 75284, the Knights of Ren transport ship. Surprisingly, the only set in this wave based upon the Rise of Skywalker. Weird, you'd think they would have done more for the final film in the saga, but I don't know, maybe they were just predicting people to hate it, which I feel as though honestly isn't that too far off from what public opinion on this film ended up being, even though I personally did enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, it's an absolute mess, but it's a fun mess. Like Attack of the Clones. Anyway, this set includes 3 minifigures, 595 pieces, and it'll cost about $70 in the United States. And I don't know why they called it the Knights of Ren transport ship, because this ship has a name. It's called the Night Buzzard. And I really have nothing to say about it. It was in the movie for a small amount of time. It has an interesting design, I suppose. It just didn't leave much of an impact on me. Or any impact at all, for that matter. I mean, you have a good amount of greebling on the ship, so that's something. I like the angles. I like the tubing at the back. It looks very experimental. I imagine that if I were to go on the Wikipedia page for this ship, it would probably tell me that this is an experimental craft, designed specifically by and for the Knights of Ren, for probably espionage, and also by the looks of its speed, with how the engines have all the tubes going to them and are pretty large in comparison to the rest of the ship. In general, the engines are actually quite similar to what the engines look like on the First Order transporter, so I wonder if they're similar parts, or even the same parts, just repainted and restructured to fit with this ship. I mean, in universe, not in LEGO, they're obviously different builds, but you get what I mean. Here you can also see that there are a couple of opening hatches. Each one is just large enough to sit a single figure inside to have them popping out the top with their weapon. And it's nice. You can also see how at the back you have a satellite dish. And in front of each of those hatches you do have a blaster, which I imagine could also be manned by the person inside. The full interior outside of those 2 hatches is just a small trapdoor-sized area, which looks as though you could maybe squeeze 2 figures inside, but yeah, it's probably just going to be 1. So that is unfortunate in some ways, because obviously you cannot fit all 6 Knights of Ren inside the ship. On the other hand, if you went to the trouble of collecting all 6 Knights of Ren, you're probably going to want to display them on, like, I don't know, like in a display rather than shoving them all inside of a ship. And if you don't have all 6, not being able to fit them all inside and not having specific spaces for each is actually kind of nice, since if there was all this empty space inside, I know that if I got this set, I would probably feel tempted to get the other sets these guys come in, just to complete the set and fill up this ship, whether I liked them or not. However, like this, it's pretty much a self-contained item, which is actually quite admirable, in my opinion. Again, they could have very easily made this a set that really encourages you to get the other 3 other sets featuring the Knights of Ren and spend a couple $100 extra. But instead, it's a nice, self-contained entity. Moving on to those figures, you get 3. You have Rey from the Rise of Skywalker, who's nothing new, but a good figure. I hope that at some point she gets a new face print to give her more expression, since this one just is very unexpressive, and it would have been nice to get the yellow lightsaber, but overall it's a good figure and no real problems here. Our other figures are the final two Knights of Ren, and no, I do not know their names, because I really don't care about the Knights of Ren. Don't get me wrong, they look cool, certainly, but they're just not characters I have any interest in whatsoever. They didn't really leave any sort of impact on me in The Rise of Skywalker. But they look cool, they both get new helmet molds, they have good printing on the torso and legs. The one on the left has a Galaxy Squad Goon Gun, which I think is hilarious. The one on the right has a large brick-built weapon, because I believe he just has a cybernetic arm with a blaster attached on in-universe. Here they didn't do that, since I guess they don't produce any of the robot arm pieces anymore, or... Yes, and I think the last one was in 2017 with Cyborg from the Justice League movie. So maybe they just don't produce that part, or the other robot arm part anymore, so they had to go with this. It looks fine. Glad it's not a stud shooter. Overall, this set for $70, honestly, I mean, the ship uses a lot of larger pieces. Both knights are very detailed figures, and they both get brand new helmet pieces. It's a big ship. You know what? I mean, the price to part isn't great, but I think this set for $70, that's not bad. Like, I'm not going to get this set because I really don't have any interest in the Night Buzzard or the Knights of Ren, but if you do like this ship or those characters, I definitely would give this set a look and consider picking it up, because it's a good set, and I think the value is overall pretty alright. Yeah, let's see if they can keep this up. Spoiler alert, they can't. Legostarwars General Grievous' Starfighter is the most disappointing thing since my son. It would hang on, wrong intro. Okay, so this set number 75286, General Grievous' Starfighter. This set includes 487 pieces and will cost an obscene amount of money. Or, well, $80, which isn't regularly obscene, but for this, it just might be. But ignoring value for a minute to talk about the actual set, it's not that good. In fact, I think that this version doesn't look as good as the 2010 version. That version, I think, has a superior design. This one definitely plays better, but I feel as though the look is worse. Which is unfortunate, since they've had a decade to improve. But just looking at this, the shaping is acceptable. I don't really enjoy the use of the three large, sort of sloped, multi-curve elements. One in the center and the two on the wing pods. Engine pods. Specifically, the ones on the sides have a bad 1x2 stud overhang at the back. There's no overhang in universe. Those just slope directly into the engines. So that's really foul, in my opinion. The middle, you have a weird place where there's just no curve, where you have this piece is flat on the bottom, and you have a sloped piece underneath, and it reminds me of the 2007 Darth Maul's Sith Infiltrator. That isn't a compliment, trust me. Anyway, you have a couple of stud shooters up top, which is nice for play. The front uses cones, which every version of this has, and it's not 100% accurate, but in terms of replicating this in LEGO, it's close enough. Yeah, the cockpit area is pretty good, all things considered, although it was in 2010 as well. The main thing is that at the front of each engine pod, right below the cones, you have those wedge plates, and there should be like a gap there. Like an empty space, imagine there's like a blade and there's just like a missing part out of the center. That's just completely missing on this LEGO version, which I think is a bit of a failure, since that was something missing on the previous versions, and being able to fit that in definitely would have given this a bit of an edge, and for me, at the very least, made up for the terrible overhang at the back. But alas. Looking at this from the rear, the engine pods are quite well designed, in my opinion, aside from that overhang. The cockpit slides forward and looks just as cramped as previous versions. Yeah. Not much to say here, aside from there is also a very obvious and bad-looking blue Technic pin, but I can accept that. There's been worse in LEGO. This is fine. The engine pods do have a very nice play feature where inside of each one you can fit 2 lightsabers, fully built, meaning that in this ship you can fit all 4 of Grievous's sabers without having to disassemble them at all, and that's really cool in my opinion. Normally LEGO Star Wars sets are really bad for storage space, so it's great to have a lot in this set. Good job, LEGO! You can also see the single spring-loaded shooter underneath, which again, is accurate to how in universe this ship has a single missile launcher situated underneath. Cool! You know what's not cool? This minifigure selection. From left to right, we have grieving, burnt Obi-Wan Kenobi, a pretty acceptable airborne trooper, and albino General Grievous. Starting with that airborne trooper, because I don't have anything to complain about here, he's the exclusive figure. I mean, we all wanted Phase 2 Cody, but this guy's fine. He has a new torso print to make him fit in with the other troopers from this wave. He has new leg printing, including printing on the hips, which makes the fact that they're not black much less obvious, which is good. Okay, the other figures. Starting with Grievous, because he's the namesake of the set. I don't get why he's white. This is something they've been doing since 2014, and I've never understood. The only time Grievous was white was in the 2003 Clone Wars 2D animated miniseries, something that isn't even canon anymore. In Revenge of the Sith, which is what this set's based on, and the Clone Wars animated series, which is the other main thing this wave is based on, in both examples, Grievous is tan, so I don't get why he's white. Also, his eyes are really small, and if I were LEGO, I'd design those more like the Clone Wars version, but that's less of an issue. Yeah, hope that the next time we get him, he'll be accurate, but I'm not holding my breath. Our other figure is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and jeezums, at least with Mustafar Anakin, they had the decency to give him a better face print. With this Obi-Wan, he's literally grieving over his best friend and brother burning alive in lava. This is actually the "You are my brother, Anakin! I loved you!" face print. Even though for this scene, I think you should have gotten an exclusive design. Something more along the lines of, "Hello there!" You know, just add a bit more character for this scene. But oh well. Personally, that gets to me even more than the torso print, but it's fine. I mean, for $40, this set's not bad at all. Except it's not $40. It's twice that, and okay, so for $40, this set obviously would be a steal. $50, I think, is what would be the reasonable price for this as a Star Wars set from LEGO, where you have the Star Wars tax, plus the standard Disney tax. Makes sense. $50 is what I would expect, but even then, that's a price that I think would be quite poor for what we get here, since the ship itself is not 500 pieces, it's 487, and it doesn't look it. There are several issues here, there are rough spots, not to mention the terrible minifigures of Obi-Wan and Grievous. At least for this scene in Obi-Wan's case, but Grievous is just bad universally. $50, I would feel cheated. But it's $80. For $80, you would need, like, a pretty sizable side build, like Boga, or at least the hangar bay that the beginning of the duel took place in. You need at least a couple other figures. I'm talking like, okay, so first off, Obi-Wan gets a new face print. Grievous is a brand new accurate version. Include Phase 2 Cody and a Magna Guard, and then maybe I would begin to see $80. But for this is absolutely ludicrous, which is unfortunate since Grievous' Starfighter is one of my favorite ship designs from the prequel trilogy, so it's really unfortunate to see it done really poorly on LEGO's part. If I see this set at Walmart for like 60% off, I might consider it, but this is one I'm almost certainly going to be skipping out on. Our next set is the big boy of this wave, set number 75288, the AT-AT, based on The Empire Strikes Back. This set includes 6 figures, 1,267 pieces, and it'll cost about $160 in the United States. And this is a pretty great improvement on the previous designs of LEGO AT-AT. We haven't had one of these since 2014. This is the 5th design at the standard scale they're made at, for relatively fitting with minifigures. And yeah, I think that this is a pretty fantastic set. Just starting by looking at the Maine Walker, they've done a good combination of adding detail and making it larger and more imposing. The legs are pretty similar in design to the 2014 version, although now you do have all 4 toes on each foot, which is a small touch, but an important one in my opinion. And they're pretty well done from all sides. Even the inside has some small detailing around the bottom, even if there is still more exposed Technic than I would like. The body is much larger than previous versions, and much wider as well. Just gives much more space on the interior, and just a much more imposing design in my opinion. And a lot of those flaps can be folded open, as you'll see in a minute. The head is very well detailed, with the curve toward the back. The guns are quite well done. The cockpit area with the front windscreen, which I suppose is the only real thing, is how I wish they'd been able to fit in some, maybe not trans red, but at the very least just something in the red color scheme, since around the viewport you just have dark gray, and I don't know, I would have liked if they'd been able to put just some red pieces in there. Just give the bit of extra oomph. I don't know. Anyway, you can see that the side panel can open up, revealing some good interior space. On the side here, you have 3 seats for snow troopers, and on the other side you have 2 seats, plus space to store an E-Web turret. So that's pretty cool to see, that they're actually having well-furnished interiors on the inside of AT-ATs now. Since, usually they kind of just have blank Technic beams and call it a day. So this is surprisingly acceptable. At the back, you have a hatch where you can fit in a very well-designed speeder bike that we'll take a closer look at in a minute. And this is also accurate to the film, where they would store this style of speeder bike in the back of the AT-AT Walker. In the front of the Walker, we have a hatch where we can control the winch, which Luke is attached to have him raise up with his grapple gun to throw a thermal detonator inside of the AT-AT, and while I don't have a picture of it, there is an opening hatch on the bottom for him to throw the detonator inside of. There isn't a good picture of it, so this is taken from the box, but my favorite feature of the set out of everything is the fact that the cockpit can now fit 3 people, 2 drivers, plus General Veers. I don't know why I love this so much. I just do. It's that extra little bit of accuracy to the movie, which I love. And it just looks really nice. Yeah, I think this was definitely a worthy upgrade to this model to have for this 40th anniversary version. Our side builds, we have this really accurate design of the Hoth speeder bike, which in my opinion is by far the best design of this craft we've ever had in LEGO. And we also have an E-Web turret, which is fine, I guess. I don't like the use of the Ninjago arrow blade, but everything else is pretty kosher here. Aside from the lack, also we are missing the battery pack, which is weird, but again, they mainly designed this to be small enough to fit inside of the AT-AT, so the fact that some corners had to be cut is understandable in my opinion. Moving on to the figures, from left to right, top to bottom, we have Luke Skywalker, General Veers, 2 AT-AT drivers, and 2 Imperial Snowtroopers. Luke is an existing figure and he looks fine. The Snowtroopers are existing figures from last year and they are fine, even if I personally don't like the dark tan hands. The other figures, though, are new. General Veers has a good face print that I think is a really good likeness to the actor who portrayed him in Empire. And the helmet is the design we got for the Mimban Trooper Han Solo from Solo, a Star Wars story. But in sand blue with some nice goggle printing, making for a very good-looking figure and easily the best General Veers Legos ever made. As for the AT-AT drivers, I believe they have the same torso and leg printing we've seen since 2014, but the helmet is finally a brand new mold that is fully enclosed around the back, because LEGO designed this piece, the previous version from 2012, to work with black heads underneath. So to give it a look of the thin helmet at the back, it's just the helmet cuts off, and you just have the black minifigure head. But then they switched to Angry Clone, so your troopers just had a whole bunch of neck showing at the back, in the back of their scalp. Luckily, LEGO's finally changed that, the helmets are fully enclosed, and it looks great. So yeah, good figures, good side builds, good main build, good movie. What's not good about this is the price, because, okay, so for everything here, including those new molds and the new figures, I think $130 would have been good. But there are a lot of new pieces here. Not new pieces. There's a new piece. There are a lot of big pieces here, excuse me. So, and plus with the Star Wars Disney tax, $140 is not what I would want to pay, but it's what I would expect from this set. This set's $160, though, and that's, frankly, ridiculous. Will I get this set? Maybe, but that price really does lower the chances quite a bit, since that is so expensive, and there are a lot of sets that are much cheaper than this from outside the Star Wars line, that I think just have a lot more value than what we see here. This is a really great set, don't get me wrong, but I definitely want to see some discounts on this before I buy it. It is a great set, though. Moving on to our retail exclusives, firstly we have the Amazon exclusive, set number 75292, the Razor Crest, based on The Mandalorian from Disney+. This set has 3 minifigures, 1 droid, 1 iconic infant, 1,023 pieces, and it'll retail for about $130 in the United States. The build we get here is of the Razor Crest itself, which is a quite well-designed ship in my opinion, in LEGO form. You have the 2 main turrets up at the front, you have the large engine pods, which have some good brick building at the front. The cockpit's well done. I mean, there isn't very much to say about the Razor Crest in terms of design. It's not the most complex ship at all. It's relatively boxy and plain, but this is very accurate to how it appears in the series, which is good. You can see, however, that the majority of this is pretty much just Technic skeleton, with pretty much all of the plates on the model being able to fold down quite easily to give interior access. The main interior space pretty much is just a small carbonite bay, where you have a couple of 1x2x5 bricks stickered with people frozen in carbonite, and you can just shove them inside of here. It's definitely not the most interesting or well-furnished interior, but it works for play fine enough, and I think these designs for the carbonite pieces work. They're not great, but they're not terrible either. Moving on to other features, the cockpit can be removed to reveal seating for 2 figures, plus room for the Baby Yoda in front of the Mandalorian. And you can see behind him that there is a second chair, as I mentioned, although that is currently being covered up by the back part of the cockpit, which can be folded forward to reveal storage for the Mandalorian's blaster. That's nice. Again, storage space. It's something you rarely see in LEGO Star Wars, but with this wave, they seem to have finally gotten it under control, for the most part. That's great. Now please, stick with it. At the back, we have a non-canonical escape pod, which seems to be based on the escape pod the Millennium Falcon had in The Last Jedi. Here you can see Greef Karga in there. He's escaping, but he's not very happy about it. And up at the front, underneath and behind the two main blasters, on each side you have a secret compartment. On the other side is just storage for some spring shooters, but here we actually have a sleeping area for Mando. That's pretty nice, and I like the stickers in the background. This interior area is actually much better furnished than the main interior of the ship, so I wish that some of this level of, it's not that detailed, but just, this has a much more authentic look to it, and I wish they'd brought that to the main interior area as well. Moving on to the figures, the first three, from left to right, are the Mandalorian, the Child, and an Imperial Scout Trooper. The two on the sides are both existing figures. Mando came out last year in the AT-ST Raider, and while I would have liked to get the Beskar variant, this figure still works quite well for what it is. I like the level of detail. I like the cape. Yeah, just everything here is pretty good. The Scout Trooper also came out last year in the Action Battle Endor Attack set, or whatever it was called. And I like this update. The legs, I think, would have worked better printed on black, but everything else is quite good, especially that new double-molded helmet piece. But no, the real star of the show here is the Child, who uses the existing LEGO baby body piece, but a brand new headpiece to represent how he appears in the series, and he is absolutely adorable. There isn't much else to say there. The headpiece is accurate, the body print works well enough. Yeah, good stuff. Our other figures are both unique. They are Greef Karga on the left and IG-11 on the right. IG-11's not too exciting since it is just IG-88 with a different print on the top, but Greef Karga is a nice exclusive figure with a brand new face print with two good prints on a good print on each side, and the torso print is also quite good in my opinion. Overall though, for $130, this set's not a good value. Again, you get some good figures, some good interior, some good play features, but overall I think $110 max is what I would want to pay for this set. $130 is just too much. Now if I see the set on a good discount, I might get it, similar to the AT-AT, but the price is just foul. Also, I don't want to give money to Amazon. Anyway, enough about that. This set is good, just overpriced. But hey, do y'all want to see a set that is good and not overpriced? In the LEGO Star Wars theme, no less? Well, prepare, because LEGO Star Wars set number 75293, the Resistance ITS Transport, is a set with 932 pieces for only $100. And the only catch is that it's based on Galaxy's Edge. You know, the theme park? Yeah, so that is a bit of a detriment, and I currently have no plans to get this set just because I have no idea what it's based on since I've never been to Galaxy's Edge. But if I ever go, I probably will pick this set up since this set is really great. This ship definitely shares a lot of design DNA with the Karelian Corvette, a style of ship most famous for its appearance as the Tantive 4 from the original Star Wars. And, yeah, the design work on this is quite nice. I like the shaping of the body. I like the design up at the front with how the cockpit is done, where you have the 4 stud shooters, 2 on each side. The engines are fairly U-wing-esque, but look quite nice. At the back, you have 4 more stud shooters for point defense turrets. These ones cannot rotate or be angled in any way. You also have folding down hatches on each side to access the interior, or you just have storage for a crate of blasters to transport. The canopy can open up to reveal space for just one figure, but it is relatively roomy for that figure. And the main body can also have a panel lift off to reveal a very sparse and uninteresting interior. That part is a little lame. For figures, we get 4. From left to right, we have, and I believe these are how these are pronounced, V. Maradi, Lieutenant Beck, as well as an astromech droid and a gonk. V. Maradi is a really great figure. I love that face print, and I love that hairpiece. It's a great figure, just I have no idea who it is. Same goes for Lieutenant Beck. I love the new color for the Mon Calamari headpiece, I just don't know this lad. The astromech droid, I imagined, has to be some sort of reprogrammed First Order, or maybe even Imperial design. And the gonk droid has nothing unique, but it's iconic. It's a gonk droid. Legos realized how much people love gonk droids. Just trust me. They're starting to put them in more and more sets, which is good. Overall, this set's great. I just don't have much to talk about because it's a relatively simple set, and I also have absolutely no idea what it's based on. Presumably the Resistance ITS transport, but, I mean, you know what I mean. I've never seen this in action in any sort of media. I don't know who these characters are. Yeah. It's a great set, and it has a great value, but that value is only because this is very niche. But hey, that is a great value, and who knows, maybe they can keep up this trend for the other retail exclusives. Hint, they don't. Set number 75291, the Death Star Final Duel. The set comes with 775 pieces and costs $100, which is $20 more than the set it's a direct remake of from 5 years ago. And, yeah, this model is very similar. I mean, there are some nice upgrades, like the doors at the front are much more detailed and look very good. You have screens at the side of Palp's throne room, but overall it's pretty much the same set. Here you can see it from the top-down view, and if you don't know how this works, the bridge that has the light and dark gray striping, that can fold all the way up so the doors are flush with the staircase. And then the 2 side sections can hinge inward to have the clips attached to those bars on the doorway. So then you can have this all connect together for a more stable and compact play design. For the build itself, the doorway is very well detailed, using some roller skate pieces, statues. It's very reminiscent, actually, of Palp's office from the prequel trilogy, so good to have that here. And it looks very nice. Adds a good amount of class to what is otherwise a bit of a bloated playset. Palp's throne is well detailed. You have the transparent blue light things that I never know what they are, but they look cool. You have a screen on each side. His throne can spin a full 360 so he can look out his window all menacingly. Yeah. And the throne has been moved back somewhat from the previous version, which I like. The stairs have the previous feature where they can just be broken apart with that lever. And underneath at the back, you do have storage for Palp's extra accessories, but you also just have space underneath where you could have figures fighting. Or you could reenact the scene from the film where you have Luke hiding under here from Vader as Vader taunts him, right before Luke harnesses the dark side to beat him to a pulp. On the left side, we have the reactor pit that the Emperor gets thrown down. You have some nice pill light stickers on the sides and a bit more detail with some 1x1x6 rounded pillar elements, but overall this is pretty much just the same build from last time. And the same thing goes for this platform, with the exception being that now You have a catapult, so you could launch Luke up there before you knock him down. Have fun with that. The set comes with 5 figures, but the only one anyone cares about is this new Darth Vader. Because he has arm printing, and it looks great. You also have new torso and leg printing, which is fine, but it's really all about that arm print. Our other figures, not great. Luke's the same figure from the 2015 set. Royal Guards are the same figure from the 2015 set. Palps is the same figure, just with a different hood that doesn't work as well as the old one in his case. Yeah, like, I'm fine with Palpatine, since for Return of the Jedi, you really can't do much better than this. But for Luke, I think they could really do an alternate face. Or, well, not a different face. You know, say, for example, one where he's really angry and harnessing his rage, because Vader just said he was going to turn Leia to the dark side. And another face where he's being, like, electrocuted to death with Force lightning. For our 2 Royal Guards, I mean, if LEGO wants to keep with this design, it's fine, but considering how all the printing we see at the front with all the red for the torso and legs, when I say all the printing, I mean all the nothing, that's all just supposed to be a cloth piece, like the cape he has at the back, and he's wearing a full, like, suit of fighting combat gear underneath. So, personally, the next time we get Royal Guards, I would like if we just had the full fabric piece going around the front and back, and then underneath, the torso and leg printing was actually based on that. I mean, will they ever go for that? Probably not, but I think that would be a really good way to take these figures. Overall, though, this set is a shameless remake of the 2015 version. And it's not a bad set. There are a lot of good improvements, but as someone who owns the 2015 set, I have no interest in this since most of the figures are the same, and it's really just a slightly less ugly version of what was overall a rather ugly, bloated playset. Some aspects of this, like the reactor core, I still think look quite bad. And again, this is much larger than it needs to be for this scene. You could have easily cut out the bridge, the doorway, and both side panels, and just had the Emperor's throne with the stairs leading up to it, as well as a small section of the bridge, and had that as like a $40 set, and that would have worked perfectly well to replicate the scene from the movie. But instead we have a massive bloated playset that gets remade before we get our new versions or even the first versions of so many other important scenes from the Star Wars saga. I mean, I'm not really surprised, I'm more so just disappointed. Especially again with the fact that this is a remake of a set that back when it came out, one of the big draws was all the exclusive figures. And in this new version, only one of them is even different from that set. It's ludicrous. So yeah, my hope isn't to get this set at any point at any sort of discount at all. I just hope that they put that Vader in cheaper sets. Do I think they will? No, this is Lego Star Wars we're talking about, but I can always hope that they can. And that's something at least. Before we continue, I will note that the final set we'll be taking a look at in this video is the upcoming Lego Star Wars Advent Calendar. So if you're planning on getting this set and don't want to be spoiled for what's included, I'd recommend you click off this video now, since I'm about to discuss and analyze all 24 gifts included. So, if this is where you're exiting this video, then thank you so much for watching, and this is Retro Brick Reviews, signing off. Still here? Okay, so the final set we'll be taking a look at is Lego Star Wars, set number 75279, the 2020 Advent Calendar, and in my opinion, this is one of the best Advent Calendars we've ever had for the Lego Star Wars lineup. This set will include 6 minifigures, as well as, I believe, 6 buildable characters, ranging from droids to creatures. It will include 311 pieces, and cost about $40 in the United States, which is the standard licensed advent calendar cost. And yeah, I think this set is really great. It includes a wide array of characters and vehicles spanning the entire saga, and even a bit of non-saga stuff, such as the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian. The front of the packaging is relatively generic as Star Wars goes, basically just showing some of the stuff included on a generic snowy background. We have pine trees, so I do not believe this is Hoth, although the mountains do somewhat represent that. Now that I think of it, where are we? I'm not really sure what planet this is set on, but it looks somewhat nice. Okay. Around the back, you can see more of the features included. And yeah, there isn't much more to say, so let's begin by taking a closer look at some of the figures. From left to right, we have Luke Skywalker from the original Star Wars, an exclusive Darth Vader in an ugly sweater, Rey from the Rise of Skywalker, Poe Dameron, who also comes in an ugly sweater, and a festive Dio. Luke is a very common figure. In fact, he came in multiple $30 sets this very year. And while this is still a nice figure, again, it's very common, and I feel as though between him and Poe, I would have preferred if Luke had had the festive sweater, because that just would have made a lot more sense to me. But like Luke and Vader, father and son, they both have the ugly matching sweaters. It would have made sense. And obviously it wouldn't have BB-8 then, but it could have had, say, R2-D2. Or maybe it could have just said, Happy Life Day, in English, or if they wanted to be particularly adventurous, Orbish. Moving on, Vader has that fantastic print for an ugly Death Star patterned sweater, which just looks incredible. You can also see that the legs are the ones taken from the new Death Star Final Duel set, which is really nice. Obviously, they gave him the sweater here so that they didn't have to include the fantastic new arm printing in this set, but you do get the legs at least, and I imagine that if that set includes a new face print for Vader, it'll also be included here, so that's cool. Then we have Rey, who's the same version from the Pasana Speeder Chase and the Night Buzzard, but she still looks pretty good here. Again, would have liked to get the yellow lightsaber, but I'm fine without it. Next, we have Poe Dameron. Again, the sweater I would have preferred to have gone to Luke, but it still looks pretty nice here with the BB-8 design. He also gets a mug of, most likely, cocoa. Yeah, and it will be nice to get him since I have never had a figure of Poe Dameron, since he pretty much only exclusively comes in more expensive sets. So it's nice to finally have a cheap option for his character. Similarly, Dio is another character who only comes in relatively higher priced sets, so it'll be good to have him in this $40 calendar. He is a really nice piece. I think he looks great and very accurate, and he has the Santa hat, which is really cute. For other figures, we get the modern style of Imperial Stormtrooper with the very oversized helmet. I wish he could turn his head, but aside from that, the look of this isn't too far off from the film. We get a Sith Trooper, which were painfully underused in The Rise of Skywalker, but it still looks pretty cool, and these guys are not exceptionally common. They do come in a battle pack, but you do only get one of them in that set, despite it literally being called the Sith Trooper Battle Pack, but anyway. So good figure to get there as well. We get a B-1 Battle Droid, which, much like what I said in the 501st Legion set, they are not very interesting, but they are very massable, and we haven't really had a set to include them in mass for several years, so pretty great to get one here, even though they come in pretty much every single advent calendar LEGO's made for the past decade. Next, we get a pit droid, which I don't know where these guys were when LEGO made Anakin's pod racer last year, but it is great to get a pit droid here, and that build looks great. And then you get a Porg who just looks happy to be here, albeit maybe a little nervous. As for all of the builds, lightning round time. The A-Wing is a really accurate build and much better looking than the mini A-Wing we got in the Death Star 2 Battle promo set earlier this year. The Lars Moisture Farm is a fantastic terrain build. I like how they got the rounded doorways using those rounded 1x1 pieces, and the Moisture Evaporator is just a very good use of parts. The Razor Crest was expected due to the success of The Mandalorian, and it looks quite good here. The TIE Dagger is probably one of my least favorite builds. It's just very bland, both in terms of the shaping, where it just kind of triangles, as well as with the coloring. It's weird that there's no red on this ship. Personally, if I were LEGO, I probably would have put a couple of red 1x2 grill pieces on the sides of the wings, or at the very least, taken the 2x2 round plates underneath of those wedge plates and put those in red. The Red 5 X-Wing, while the S-foils cannot close, as long as you have it in attack position, this is a very good-looking model, and you even have detailing for the 4 engines, which is cute. The Millennium Falcon is quite flat here, but the shaping from the top down is on point. I believe this is the first Advent Calendar Falcon to include the radar dish. However, the cockpit is a bit flat, and I probably would have instead gone with a cone piece. The Republic Frigate is a ship we don't see in LEGO too often, and I'm very glad to get it here, since technically it is the first ship we see in the entire saga, if we watch it in chronological order. So that's really good to get here. And again, it's a nicely designed ship, and I hope that LEGO does remake it at some point, since we haven't had this version since 2007, and we haven't had any version since 2011 with the Clone Wars variation, so hope we get a new Republic Frigate at some point. Then we have one of my favorite builds of this set, the Droid Control Ship, again from The Phantom Menace. And that just looks really good. I've always really loved the design of the Droid Control Ship. I hope that at some point LEGO makes it at a larger scale, most likely as a UCS set, since there isn't really a way to do it in a minifigure scale design. But that would be cool to get eventually, even if I don't see it happening anytime soon, but we can always hope. Then you have the Pod Racer, which is serviceable. The Snowspeeder is also quite bland and uninteresting. The Red-Nosed Tauntaun is pretty cute, although maybe the snout should have been a bit longer. The Shield Generator is exceptionally boring and probably my least favorite build in the Advent Calendar as a whole. The Snowman Gonk is just fantastic and truly a Christmas miracle. And the last of the builds is Vader's Castle, which is very nice, albeit maybe a bit wide, and it's complete with its own little TIE bomber. I know it's probably supposed to be a TIE Advanced, but it has 2 cockpits, so it's a TIE bomber. So that's this calendar. Can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that, so far at least, this calendar is shaping up to be better than the Harry Potter one. Or more accurately, since we've seen everything from this set, but not Harry Potter, the Harry Potter Advent Calendar for 2020 is shaping up to be worse than the Star Wars set. And that's a relationship I'd never expected to describe between any set from Star Wars compared to a set from Harry Potter, since that theme is pretty much universally better than LEGO Star Wars in every way at this point. And, yeah. So I'm very excited to pick this up to count down to Christmas with it. And yeah, it just has some very good figures, exclusives, and then also some that aren't exclusive but just good to get. Some great mini builds, some fun other creatures and droids. Yeah. And that is the last set we'll be discussing in this video. Now, of course, LEGO Star Wars will have other sets this year, such as we know that in the fall we're getting a buildable figure based on the child from The Mandalorian, to go along with the lineup we have of characters like Dio, Yoda, BB-8, the Porg, and also UCS-R2 if you have him from back in 2012. And speaking of the UCS line, we do know that we will, of course, be getting a new Ultimate Collector Series set this year as well. And we don't have a definitive answer on what it will be. I've heard rumors that it's going to be a remake of the Death Star 2 set from 2005. I've heard rumors it's going to be a remake of the Imperial Shuttle from 2010 was when we got the UCS version of that. Personally, it's a toughie, since I think those are both good sets to remake. I think the Death Star 2 is definitely the one that needs the remake more, because it's a lot more primitive and was also earlier on. While the Imperial Shuttle, while I personally like that ship a lot more than I like the design of the second Death Star, that is something we've had quite recently, and yeah, there's much to say about it. Also, it was just very well done the first time around, and I can't think of much to improve on. And overall, though, the 10 sets we've discussed in this video are quite the mixed bag. Some sets are pretty good, some sets are kind of bad. Some sets are fairly priced, some sets are poorly priced, and on that scale, Grievous' Starfighter is in a class all of its own. But overall, I'm excited for a good few of these. I definitely plan on picking up the 501st pack. I will almost certainly get the AAT. I have plans to get the AT-AT at some point if I see it at an acceptable discount. The Advent Calendar is great. Yeah, lots of good stuff this wave. Pretty glad with how things turned out overall, even if there are definitely some sets that I think are kind of failures, but overall, excited for a good amount of these sets, and not much else to say there. So thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, why not check out some of my other videos? And yeah, so this is Retro Brick Reviews, signing off.